Should you drink alcohol with antibiotics? Now, when I was working in my pharmacy in Parbold many years ago, this was a question that I would be asked lots. It was always the number one question when a patient was given an antibiotic prescription was, can I have a drink with this? I'm going to a wedding. It was always, I'm going to a wedding, not I actually just want to have a drink. And if I was feeling in a good mood, if I liked the person, I would give them an honest answer. If I wanted to be a little bit cheeky, then I would tell them no and watch them look like they were going to cry into their beer that they couldn't drink. But for most cases, alcohol isn't necessarily a complete no with antibiotics. And it's always been one of those things that, oh no, my mum always told me, or my gran always told me, that I can't drink when I'm taking antibiotics. And that actually stems back to the 1940s, 1950s, when syphilis was really common. Syphilis is an STD, for those of you that haven't heard of it, but I'm sure most of you have. And what they were finding, obviously, were people were drinking, they were then getting free and easy, and they were more likely to sleep around. And of course, if you had syphilis and was taking antibiotics, only once the antibiotics had kicked in would the infection have cleared. So whilst there wasn't a specific problem taking antibiotics and alcohol from a reaction perspective, doctors thought, well, if we tell people they can't drink because they're on antibiotics, then we're not going to have them sleeping around, they're not going to spread syphilis throughout the village, and so we're not going to have a problem. And that always tickled me when I found that out at university. It always sort of stayed with me, that's where that phrase or that saying comes from. So for most antibiotics, no, it's not a problem. However, there are a couple of antibiotics, metronidazole, cotrimoxazole are the two common ones that we use in the UK, that when mixed with alcohol actually leads to a toxic chemical buildup. So those antibiotics block the breakdown pathway for alcohol, which results in a bigger level of the chemical that causes a hangover. So think hangover on steroids. So nobody feels very well when they've got a hangover. Imagine multiplying that by 4 or 5, feeling like you're dying. And that's somewhere like the effect that you get when you drink alcohol with metronidazole. So metronidazole is commonly given by the dentist, sometimes given by the doctor. It's often used sometimes for vaginal infections, but isn't used commonly across the board. But if you are prescribed it, you need to make sure that you not only avoid alcohol, but that you avoid alcohol in food, so things like trifles, cakes, you avoid alcohol in liquid medicines, and you avoid alcohol in mouthwashes. Because for some people, they're that sensitive that even a sniff of alcohol is enough to trigger this reaction. And from the people that I've seen it happen to, it really is something that you don't want to experience. And the general advice is that you need to wait 48 hours after your last tablet before you're then safe to consume alcohol, because it takes another 48 hours for the medication to completely clear your system. But for the remainder of the antibiotics, it's often not a problem. And the easy way to know whether there's an issue drinking alcohol with your antibiotic is if there is an alcohol issue, it will firstly say it on the patient leaflet in the packaging, but it will also say it on the label from the pharmacy. So if you read the warning labels, it will say, avoid alcohol, may cause drowsiness or whatever. So if there's an alcohol warning on it, then that's usually a clear sign that you shouldn't be drinking. And you can always ask your pharmacist whether that's a definite no or whether it's more of a caution. But it will usually tell you somewhere on the packaging that alcohol is a problem. If there's no alcohol warning in the leaflet and there's no alcohol warning on the label, then generally there's no issue having alcohol. However, what we wouldn't want to do is have copious amounts of alcohol, because that can increase the risk of the effects of the alcohol being increased. So more nausea, more drowsiness, because when you've got an infection, you're more likely to react poorly to alcohol, and it's harder for the body to break that alcohol down. So a glass of wine at a family meal might be okay, but a night out with the lads where you're having 8 or 9 pints is definitely not okay. Alcohol also dilates the blood vessels, so it makes them open up, and that can prevent the body from raising the temperature, which it does to slow the spread of an infection. So alcohol can actually affect the way in which your body deals with an infection, with or without antibiotics. The risk of dehydration is greater if you drink, because you've obviously got a temperature, you're unwell, you're more likely to have a dehydration issue, and alcohol influences that even more. Antibiotics can cause inflammation in the liver. Flucloxacillin, an antibiotic for skin infections, is really common for creating an issue with the liver. Also, consequently, causes an issue with the gallbladder. But if you're drinking alcohol alongside those antibiotics, then you potentially increase the risk of damage and inflammation to the liver. So again, whilst one drink might be okay, lots of drink increases the risk on the liver. So it increases the burden. And then finally, obviously, antibiotics can also irritate the lining of the gut. Alcohol can cause irritation, dyspepsia, gastritis, and of course, antibiotics can irritate the gut lining in a similar way. So combining antibiotics and alcohol together can increase the risk of damage to the digestive system. So really what you need to be thinking about if you've been prescribed antibiotics is, what are they for? How are they? How long are you going to be on them for? And what is your reasoning for wanting to have a drink? And I'm not being judgmental there. What I'm trying to say is, are you out and about and you want to feel like you're fitting in, or are you thinking about just having a beer sat watching the TV? And it really obviously depends on the antibiotic that you've got, what your digestive system is like, and how you're feeling generally as to whether it's a good idea to drink, even if there is no alcohol warning on the label of your particular medication. So it's important to be aware of the impact of medication on alcohol, and also the impact of alcohol on medication. So I hope you found this video useful. Please do make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to my channel. Please drop a like and a comment on this video so that more people get to see the value. And there'll be lots more videos over the coming weeks, and hope to see you on another one soon. Thank you for watching.